Welcome to bringing data together in Cadcorp SIS WebMap. In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how we can connect our GIS data in WebMap to a website. This can bring additional content to our GIS data and make WebMap a central location for our users to consume information in one place. This will be a technical demonstration involving expressions and HTML. In the UK, we are fortunate to have access to a variety of free-to-use open datasets. We can complement our own business data with these free datasets to help us with our decision making. Historic England provide a number of GIS datasets showing the most historically and architecturally significant places in England. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use their listed buildings data. Here we have Cadcorp SIS desktop. I have downloaded the GIS data for listed buildings and exported it to my PostGIS database. We are now looking at this data in my SWD project file. I have published this SWD project file to WebMap, so if we click on one of the features in the map and view its attribute information, we can see it's given us information about its name, location, its grade status, its listed entry number, and its listed date. Now the listed buildings data comes with more columns of data than we're seeing here. I just decided to remove some of the columns that I'm not interested in. Now the Historic England website provides a detailed record for each listed building. So let's try and find the listed building record on their website. Let's perform a search for Buckingham Palace. And then select the listed building record. So these records have a lot more information than what is supplied in the GIS file. I think it would be useful to create a link from the GIS data to these online records. Historic England have recently added hyperlinks to these records in the GIS data, but I'm still going to show you how it's done because it's a nice data set to show the concept. You can then use this method and apply this to other data sets that you might work with. So to get started, we need to look at the structure of the website URL. So the first part of the URL probably stays the same. This is directing the user to the listed building record section of the website. But the second part at the end is a number. And if we look closely at the data in the record, we can see that this number matches the list entry number. So if I were to change the final part of this URL to a different list entry number, then we would see a different listed building record. Now we know how the URL works, we can confirm in WebMap that we have that list entry number in our GIS data. Let's return back to Cadcorp WebMap, and we can see in our data that we do have the list entry number. This means we can use this data to create a hyperlink to the online records. Let's return back to Cadcorp SIS desktop, and I'm going to add a new expression column against our listed buildings data. So to start the expression, we need to use a quotation mark, and then add the beginning part of the URL from the website. So we'll paste that into our expression and then finish this line off with another quotation mark. I'll separate the rest of the expression over a couple of lines to make it easier to follow. We then need to add a plus, and then we need to select a column in our data which has the list entry number. Now we can see on the right hand side that the OK button is still grayed out, and this is because the expression isn't valid at the moment. This is because the URL is a string data type and the list entry is an integer, so you can't have different data types in the expression. To resolve this, we can convert the list entry value to a string by adding str at the beginning and then enclosing the list entry schema in brackets. We can see on the right hand side that the OK button is not grayed out, so we can now click OK. On the left hand side, I'm going to rename this new column Hyperlink. We can save the SWD and then return back to WebMap and refresh the browser. If we now click on the listed building at Buckingham Palace and look at the attribute information, we can now see our hyperlink to the listed building record, and if we click on that link, it then takes us to that record on the Historic England website. Instead of showing the full URL, we can use HTML to style this out so it looks nicer to the end user. You can imagine if you have a really long address that is going to look unwieldy. Let's go back to Cadcorp SIS desktop, and I have two examples to show you. So here is the first example. We're using HTML attribute href to create the hyperlink to the Historic England website. Href gives us a flexibility to style how the hyperlink is going to look. The structure of the expression changes in SIS desktop when using HTML. There are additional quotation marks and plus symbols involved. At the beginning, we have the href attribute. This is followed by the beginning part of the URL. We then add the list entry column value again, like the previous example. When the hyperlink is selected in WebMap, we want it to open at the destination in a new tab in a browser. This is controlled by the target property. Finally, we then add the text we want to use instead of the full address. So here we have the text website. The href is then closed off. So let's copy this expression and add this as a new column against the listed building data. On the left-hand side, we'll then rename this Hyperlink 2. Before we look at the results of this, let's look at another example. So the structure of this one is the same. However, this time we're not going to replace the URL with some text, but we're going to display an image instead. Here we have the HTML image source attribute. We point to the location of the image we want to use, and if necessary, we can define a width and height for the image as it appears in WebMap. 32 pixels by 32 pixels is a good size. So let's take a copy of that expression and again add this as a new column to my listed building data, and then we'll rename this Hyperlink 3. We can now save the SWD and take a look at the results in WebMap. So I'll just refresh WebMap. We'll click on Buckingham Palace and then view the attributes. So we can now see the three different examples I've just created. We have the first hyperlink, which has got the full URL address. We have the second hyperlink where we replace the full URL with the text website. And then our final example is where we change the text to an image. This concludes my overview of bringing data together in Cadcorp SIS WebMap. If you're new to HTML, there are plenty of online resources and tutorials to help you. If you require any further assistance with Cadcorp SIS products, you can go to the Cadcorp online help or contact us by email or telephone.